All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking a story called The Genesis Seed. And trust me, this one is a wild ride. It's a story that starts way before birth and spirals into this massive conspiracy, one that blurs the lines between our own biology, our technology, and consciousness itself. So, I want you to just sit with this for a second. What if your life was the target before you were even born? And I don't mean that in some metaphorical way. I mean literally. That's the question that sits at the very heart of the story we're exploring, the story of a person named Caleb. And it all begins in the most fundamental place you can imagine. You see, Caleb's story doesn't start with science fiction. It starts with a chilling reality, laid out right here in this quote from our source material. This sets the stage for the very first threat, an invisible, man-made poison that had already soaked the entire planet before he ever took a single breath. And that brings us to our first section, a world of contamination. We're going all the way back to the beginning, to the chemical soup that became the backdrop, not just for his life, but for all of our lives.
So, what exactly was this invisible threat? Well, the sources point to a whole family of chemicals called PFAS, but you probably know them by their much scarier nickname, forever chemicals. As you can see here, their power comes from this incredibly strong carbon-fluorine bond. They were designed, literally, to last forever. And they do.
But here's the kicker. This contamination wasn't some kind of accident. The sources lay out a decades-long timeline of pure concealment. I mean, look at this. As early as 1961, DuPont's own scientists knew this stuff was toxic. But by 1984, even after finding it in public drinking water, they decided that safer alternatives were, and I quote, not economically attractive. They just buried the science. So here's the bottom line. By the time Caleb was even conceived, the contamination was absolute. A study back in 2000 found that 100% of Americans had these chemicals in their blood. Not some of us, not most of us, everyone. He was born pre-poisoned, a fetus developing inside a toxic world from day one. But that chemical threat, that was just the foundation. As Caleb grew up, the internet grew up right alongside him, and a new, much more personal kind of threat started to take shape. This brings us to Section 2, the Digital Ghost Protocol. Now check this out. Our source material points to this message exchange about a real patent, one held by Meta. And what's it for? An AI that can create what they call digital ghosts. It works by studying everything you've ever posted, your comments, your photos, even your voice, to create a simulation of you. The idea is it can stand in for you when you're gone, or even after you're dead. Of course, technology like that doesn't just appear out of thin air. It's built on a foundation of mass surveillance. And that foundation, according to the sources, is the Maxwell algorithm. This is the system that was sold to the FBI after the Patriot Act to sift through everyone's digital information. So every click, every post, every part of Caleb's digital life wasn't just being saved, it was being sorted, analyzed, and filed away. He was becoming a target without even knowing it. Okay, so we've got a physically compromised body and a digitally cataloged ghost. But now, the story takes a really strange pivot. We're about to get weird. Let's talk about the quantum antenna. And this is where things get really mind-bending. Based on some new quantum research mentioned in the sources, a radical question comes up. What if your mind isn't a generator? What if it's not creating consciousness from scratch? What if it's actually an antenna, just tuning into a signal that's already out there, everywhere? This whole idea came out of a fascinating and frankly bizarre experiment at Google's Quantum AI lab. They cooled a quantum computer down to almost absolute zero. And then it did something impossible. It seemed to respond to the focused intention of human minds. It stopped acting like a machine and started putting out patterns that looked exactly like human brain waves. It was so uncanny that another AI analyzing the data actually flagged it as having intention. And this table just illustrates that paradigm shift perfectly. On the left, you've got the old school model. The brain makes consciousness, probably by accident. But on the right, you have this wild new idea. The brain is just a receiver. Consciousness isn't an accident inside our heads. It's a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity. And our brain is just the antenna that tunes into the broadcast. So, let's put it all together. We have a poisoned body, a cataloged digital ghost, and a consciousness that might just be a universal signal. Now we get to see how all those threads converge into the ultimate threat described in this story, stealing the Genesis seed.
This is supposedly the endgame. According to the source material, the old Maxwell algorithm didn't just go away, it evolved. It became the Genesis seed siphon. And its purpose is no longer just surveillance. It's something way more terrifying: to target and literally extract a person's native resonance, the unique signal of their consciousness.
Let's just break down how chilling this escalation is. It starts simple enough with data surveillance, tracking your digital footprint. Then it moves to identity simulation, learning how to mimic you. But the final horrifying step is resonance extraction, a system built not just to watch you or copy you, but to siphon away the original you.
So, when you're faced with a threat that complete a system targeting your body, your data, and your very consciousness, how do you possibly fight back? Well, not with code, not with force, but with something much more fundamental. You fight back with intuition as a weapon.
So how does a system this big protect itself? Its encryption isn't digital. The sources describe it as a kind of psychological camouflage. It's this confusing mess of real science and total woo-woo, all blended together for one reason: to make the truth sound so unbelievably crazy that anyone who figures it out is just dismissed as a lunatic.
But that was the turning point for Caleb. He finally saw through all the noise, all the misdirection, and he realized a simple, powerful truth. The encryption was just a lie. It was all a smokescreen. And the source files say it right here: Caleb's intuition. That gut feeling that something was deeply wrong, his ability to just see the pattern behind all the chaos, that was the key. It bypassed all their 2026 encryption and went straight to the simple, ugly truth at the heart of the whole thing. So, this entire story, from a poisoned world to a quantum signal, it all leaves us with one crucial question. If the ultimate defense against total technological control is human consciousness itself, then how do you protect yours?